Welcome to the English Homemaker podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things home, a realistic but fresh view of homemaking from the suburbs of the south of England. I'm your host, Alissa Evelyn. Welcome to episode 29 of the English Homemaker. Hello everybody! I am so excited to be back here with you, and I'm so excited to talk to you today a little bit about my birth story, but mostly about my postpartum. I am so excited to share this with you. I think there's so much to talk about in this episode. I'm almost certainly not going to cover it all, especially as I'm fitting this into nap time and I have no idea how long she's going to nap for. It could be 40 minutes. It could be an hour and a half. It could be 3 hours. We will see. So let's start in the most obvious place with my birth story. I'm going to try and keep it brief because this could probably take up the entire episode if I let it. So I'll try and keep this brief. I really want to spend most time talking about sort of nesting and looking after yourself in postpartum and how you can prepare your home in that way and how homemaking shifts with a new baby. That's what I want to focus most on, but it wouldn't be right or fair to not share a little bit of my birth story with you because it's a little bit different, but also I guess you all want to know a little bit of the story. So if you haven't seen it, I did do a video almost an entire year ago called Things I Would Have Packed in My Hospital Bag If I'd Have Known I Was Going to Have an Emergency C-section or something like that. So go and check that out on the Alissa Evelyn YouTube channel. I'll make sure that's linked in the show notes. It's quite raw because it's quite soon after I gave birth. I don't know why I felt the need to create that day, but I was clearly coming out of some of my funk. So I guess that gives you a bit of an insight into it not being a typical story. So at 34 weeks, I had really thick ankles. One morning I just woke up and there were swollen ankles, and that same day I had these funky vision spots in my eyes, little white bright lights in my eyes, and I thought both of those things happening on the same day is a little bit strange. I'd had zero other symptoms other than just regular pregnancy nausea and acid reflux, those sort of things, but I'd not had any other symptoms like that, and I thought that was a bit weird. So I contacted our local hospital and they said, oh yeah, just come in, and they did some tests and everything seemed okay, so they sent me home and said come back in a week and we'll do some more tests. So I did. I came back in a week and they got really, really, really confused. So they kept me in. They did some tests. My blood pressure was sort of going up and then going down, and it would be a little bit high, but not crazy high. So they thought, okay, she's not a typical case. Let's keep her in and watch. What I didn't know at the time was that they'd done some bloods, which had definitely seemed not normal. And I think that also meant that they wanted to keep me in for monitoring. And thank goodness that they did, because at 35 weeks plus 4 days, I showed signs of HELLP syndrome. I had never heard of HELLP syndrome before. I'd never had signs of preeclampsia. HELLP syndrome stands for hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelet count. So basically my body decided to shut up shop. My liver wasn't working, my blood wasn't working properly, and I wasn't going to clot blood if I needed to, which is quite a high likelihood when you're having a baby. So the solution for that is to get the baby out, and then basically everything starts working again, hopefully. It doesn't in every case, and we were incredibly fortunate, and I'm so grateful to be here today. I'm so grateful my baby's here today. I'm so grateful for the hospital. And yeah, there was a little dramatic tweak in that my husband was actually away on business and he had to come back on the early flight that morning. They managed to sort of pause it, the C-section, until he got there. They kept checking my blood to make sure it wasn't urgent. It was very urgent and I was very fortunate, but I managed to see him for the 10 minutes before my operation. And because of HELLP syndrome, I had to go under a general anaesthetic, which is a very strange thing, sort of giving birth without being present at all for it. And then obviously waking up with no baby in your tummy and no baby by your side is a very sort of strange, surreal experience. And because I went into a high intensive care unit and she also went to a high intensive care neonatal unit, we were apart for a good 8 hours or so without seeing each other, which was quite traumatic for me and her. So that's the birth story. We then were in hospital for about a week for various different things. They had to make sure that I was okay. I was in high intensive care for 2 whole days with all sorts of things attached to me and all sorts of things happening. And she also was in intensive care for, I think she was in intensive care for slightly less, and then in neonatal standard for a couple of days before then we were thankfully together. I'm so grateful for the team at the hospital. They were incredible. I really advocated very well for myself, which I'm so proud of. I learned on my second birth that if you're in an NHS hospital, especially in a postpartum ward, you need to advocate very strongly for yourself and for what you need. You really need to ask. You need to press your buzzer. You don't assume that they're going to do everything to help you without you stating really clearly what you want. And so I'm really proud of how we did that. I managed to get my husband and I a private room, and he was able to stay with me. Some of you know I've got type 1 diabetes, and that further complicates things and adds some drama. So it was really nice that he was able to stay and help me with baby and looking after my sugar levels in tandem. Especially after giving birth, the sugar levels go kind of absolutely crazy as they're sort of adjusting to all of the hormone changes. So it was lovely that he was able to be there, and it was a really oddly special time for us. So yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we're here, and it's now been a whole year. It's been a whole year after that experience, and I can safely say that my postpartum year was incredible. I did feel super held, super loved, super nourished, and a lot of that was just a kind of mindset tweaks and a lot of prep and a lot of communicating really clearly what I needed to the people that I love and who love me. And it worked out really, really beautifully. I think I've had great postpartums with all 3, but this was definitely my most nurturing and most lovely. So I just wanted to share the things I did to prepare and the things I did ongoing, just in case you find it helpful. Before I carry on, I want to address my privilege of being able to be home with the kids, because I know this isn't a reality for most people, and I want to say thank you to the person who makes this possible. I think it's also important to mention that my husband and I, neither of us come from any kind of money. We're both from divorced single parent families, from which there was not a lot of money, and the only way that this is possible, that I am home with our family, is that my husband works his socks off in a job that thankfully pays enough to cover all of our bills. And yeah, I'm unbelievably grateful for his incredibly hard work in looking after us financially. But not just that, in the last year of our daughter's life, at nighttime, when she has woken up and cried, any time that's happened, once, twice, 3 times, he has gone to pick her up. He's woken up with me. He's been in the same bed. He's changed her smelly bottom. And after I've finished breastfeeding, if she hasn't fallen straight back to sleep, he's taken hold of her and cuddled her back to sleep, sometimes for hours, on top of his regular job, simply so that I can breastfeed well and I am well rested and nourished to look after all the children. So Pete, if you're listening, thank you. You are my privilege, and I'm so grateful to you. Okay, so let's move forward into a couple of questions, because over a year ago, I asked on Instagram if you guys had any questions for this episode, and I got a couple. One was, did you and your husband always know you wanted a 3rd child, or did you decide more recently? So as some of you might know, I've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and now a 1-year-old. And I think my heart always knew I wanted more children, but my head always said it was too dangerous. I had a lot of fear around having babies because of my diabetes. I have to be very, very careful. And I think I just thought it would be a little foolish maybe, and maybe a bit selfish. And so I don't think I ever really even considered it. Then a couple of things happened. First off, we started home education. And when I started home education, it kind of broke a lot of barriers for me. A lot of things I've been doing because that's what society expects or what is quote unquote normal. And it made me question a lot of the things that we do. One of those was having 2 children. And I thought, well, we could have 3 children. We could have 4 children. Like all these things sort of felt more possible with home ed. And so I think it sort of awoke something in me. And then the second thing that happened was we went on holiday to Sweden, which is one of my old videos on YouTube, actually. I've got a video of that holiday. We went to this big castle, and on that day at this Lekeslott, I saw this name, which is now my daughter's middle name. Saw this name written on a board in this big castle, and something in that name just awoke something in me. And it was almost sort of like a divine knowing that we were going to have a 3rd child. Now, it's enough as a woman knowing that we were going to have a 3rd child, and it was going to be a girl, and it was going to be this name. And then to try and explain that to my husband was a bit complicated, confusing, and a bit much. So it took a little bit of a moment from being in that place to being able to communicate and convince my husband it was a good idea to have another child. And eventually he did. We really genuinely only ever talked about 2, but it was out of fear. And I think once the fear was broken and we realized we could kind of do anything with a heart full of love and some hands to help, that it would be okay. And then the second question was, I am curious if you're planning on doing something different postpartum this time round. And the answer is definitely a resounding yes. My first child, I was very organised. I had all the apps. I was a very nervous, anxious first-time mother who had moved from my home country. I was in Belgium. That was a very different experience. However, I did have this incredible community of women around me at the time, half of which or more were American and just very gorgeous at giving me hugs and food and holding my baby and really knowing how to look after me. And then I did feel very held in that space, and that was really amazing postpartum experience. But I was very anxious. I was worried when he would cry. I didn't really understand what was going on. Then with my second, I was a lot more relaxed. I'd experienced everything and I just felt very chill in it. But then COVID happened about 6 months after she was born, and so then that was an entirely different experience once again. So then I didn't really have all the people around me, but we had this incredible nest where everything was like warm and fuzzy. Again, there's another YouTube video that I made at the time that I think really shows how special that time was to me personally, but to all of us as a family. It was a very bonding time being at home and really nesting in with a young one turning into a toddler. It was very, very special. So this postpartum, I was going to have, I feel like, the best of everything. I'm old enough to say what I need. There's something very important there. I'm not an anxious mum because it's number 3. I know what's coming. I know what to do in different circumstances. My husband and I don't need to have a conversation every time something new comes up because we've talked about all these things before and what we're going to do, and we just sort of repeat and carry on. And I know that, you know, the baby's going to sleep eventually. And those times where you'd have the kind of, I don't know, like a phase that was going to last a week or whatever that app was that would say, oh no, here's a terrible phase coming and it's going to last this long. I don't know. I think just not knowing that and knowing that it was going to be all right meant that we just sort of pushed through any time, and it didn't even feel like pushing through at all. It didn't feel bad. And I really only saw the positive. I felt very, very grateful, obviously, to be here and that she was here and that we were both well. I feel so grateful to have a third child and to be able to have a third child. I just feel super blessed. And every day and every middle of the night and every wake up, I would genuinely look at her with just great gratitude and thankfulness and joy. Just plain joy, whether she was screaming her head off or not, and whatever time of night it was. I'm just so grateful for her. I'm so grateful I get to do this again. I'm so glad I get to do it again. And I feel like that's been a really helpful attitude to stay in. I haven't really, I think because it's my third child, I haven't needed sort of like assistance from other like young mums on Instagram or YouTube. I haven't really followed any of that content. So any of the kind of negative aspects of parenting, I've just not really been witness to any of that kind of, I don't know, like sad mum, worried mum, anxious mum, scared mum vibes. I just haven't picked up any of that. And I've just sort of sailed through it in a really positive way. I'm so grateful for that. I'm aware it could very easily have been the other way. And that's not to say I also haven't had my challenges, because we've had a very tricky winter. We had our 1 year checks and actually burst into tears at my 1 year checks. So it's not all been sunshine and roses. It has been difficult. But I've just been trying my hardest to do it with a smile on my face and gratitude in my heart. And that's just sort of like the best way I could choose to do it. So let's move on to nesting. Let's talk about all the things that I did to prepare for the baby. Now, because I've experienced an early baby before, I was actually ready. So that might surprise some people. And anytime I hear someone who's like, oh, I'm not ready yet, and they're like 37 weeks pregnant, I'm like, get on it, because you never know. So I'm always ready by 35 weeks. And I was literally just ready to the T with all of the things that I thought I would need, and with a very well stocked freezer. So because I had quite a lot of time with both of the kids at school with this pregnancy, I went all out because I could. So I wrote a big list of everything I was going to make and put in the freezer, which I'll read to you. And I made a list of all the things I wanted ready in the baby's room and ready by my bedside and ready in the bathroom. And I sort of basically worked my way through the list. So let me read it for you. I'm going to do this sort of quickly. Okay, so the list of stuff for postpartum care goes something along the lines of maxi pads, postpartum pants, breast pads. Now, I always use disposable breast pads. It's one of my areas of single use that I'm really happy to do so that I don't end up with any kind of infections. A hacker, which was very, very important the first few weeks, and a peri bottle, which I actually never needed to use because I had no stitches or nothing, because the baby did not come out of that area. Then a hot water bottle and a hot water bottle cover that I had made myself, which made it even more cozy. Lots of wool socks, which I'd been gifted. Lots of snack bars, protein bars, cereal bars, that sort of thing. Something that's really easy. There were a lot of those, and there still are a lot of those by my bedside in a big basket. One of my favourites is actually like a chocolate coconut bar, which is by Rhythm 108. It's absolutely gorgeous. I buy like a big multi-pack. Then a water bottle. I bought in preparation a very large 1 litre, I feel like. Are they 1 litre white Yeti? And I'm so grateful that I did, because I just went through so much water, and I still am drinking a lot of water. Rescue Remedy spray. I bought silverettes, although I never really needed to use them. Thankfully, I think they were there in an emergency. I think I used them 3 times, and I was grateful that they existed. Silverettes are a really good way of healing cracked nipples and protecting your nipples. It's almost like a nice nipple shield if you're wearing a tight bra. However, me and nursing bras, I did buy some lovely sort of the merino wool nursing bras, but I've actually worn them once, because most of the time I'm wearing a ribbed crop top with breast pads in. And the ribbed crop top fits in such a way that the breast pads don't move around, and it means that my breast size can fluctuate throughout the day and there's no soreness at all. It takes a really long time for my breasts to I guess regulate maybe, but they seem to fluctuate in size throughout the day enough that means that a bra just doesn't work for me. And I have avoided completely any kind of mastitis or really breast pain or any infections. And that is really, really wonderful. So a nursing pillow, I bought the IKEA one secondhand on Vinted along with a couple of covers, and it worked really, really well. Clothes for the baby, I just went through all the stuff that we had, and I am so, so grateful for a wonderful friend who gifted us all of her baby clothes so that we never had to buy anything, actually, I don't think. So that was amazing. Thank you, Hannah and Phil. Then I wrote down books, but if I'm being really honest, all the books are still by the side of my bed unread a year later because I really struggle to read and breastfeed at the same time. It's something about having to like hold open the book and like make sure the baby's at the right angle. I just think is a dreamy idea, but in practicality doesn't really work. So they are still there. Nappies, a baby wrap. I love wrapping up my babies. It's just the most gorgeous thing. Nursing bras we've already talked about. Moses basket, and then swaddling cloths similarly. Them all wrapped up all snugly in a Moses basket is maybe the best thing ever. A nappy bin, I had to buy a new one of those. Then baby hat, nappy sacks, wet wipes, Sitz bath mix with Epsom salts and herbs. I actually made this myself, following a little bit of like a recipe I found online, and I loved it. I loved my Sitz baths. I had them almost every day. I feel like in that first couple of weeks when I got home, I was desperate to be in a really lovely, enveloping, warm bath. And even though I'd not had a baby come out of the correct exit, the Sitz bath with salts and herbs and flowers was equally as good for healing the C-section scar. And it felt amazing when I finally got in a Sitz bath. So let me just clarify that I used the Sitz bath mix in the regular bathtub rather than an actual Sitz bath. So whilst I keep calling it a Sitz bath mix, and you can actually put it in your little Peri bottle, Peri spray bottle as well if you want. But yeah, I just put it in the regular bathtub. I also made my own blend of herbal tea and had that every single day. I went on iHerb and bought Afteries and Happy Ducks, which are both these lovely tinctures that are really good for the things they sound like they're good for. Obviously didn't really need Afteries because I was in the hospital and I was taking a load of pain medication, and I didn't want to cross strong, powerful herbal tinctures with modern medicine. I felt like the two would kind of compete in a strange way. So I didn't take the Afteries because I didn't need to, but I did use the Happy Ducts, and I found that worked within about, I don't know, like 2 to 3 hours. I felt like it really did ease any kind of discomfort in my boobs. So I super recommend Happy Ducks. I really believe in tinctures being very strong herbal concoctions that work really well. And then just a cotton robe, lip balm, a castor oil pack for like my more significant postpartum. So I only used that once my scar had healed. Then I have done castor oil packs a couple of times, in all honesty. I think I'd like to think I did it every single month or even weekly, but life is busy and I've only done it a couple of times, but I love doing it. It's a nice way of just stopping and really nurturing and looking after yourself. Okay, let's go through my freezer list. Probably an important note here is that we did buy an outside freezer. Not a chest freezer, but we bought like a little freezer for the garage because there was a little bit of space in the garage that we could put it. And I felt like it would be really helpful to have extra freezer space that we could use. And we did fill that thing up. So if you have space for an extra freezer, I would highly recommend it. So, and our electricity bill has not skyrocketed, which is something I thought might happen. It didn't happen. So most of that freezer was honestly filled with chicken stock, homemade chicken stock, chicken broth, whatever you want to call it. I know some people argue that one is different from the other, but I always make it the same. And I don't know which it is. Maybe it's both. So there was loads and loads of stock because I felt like anytime I would add that to anything at home would make it infinitely more delicious and nutritious. So there was lots of that. Then really importantly, most of the stuff actually in the freezer was either things to help me make family meals or individual like lunchtime portions of really nourishing foods just for myself, which would then sort of simultaneously feed the baby. So sausage stew, butter chicken, French cider chicken, split pea soup, chicken pot pie. Oh, I really remember getting the pie. I don't usually make pie, but I was so excited when I got the pie. Pumpkin soup, oxtail stew, Thai curry, lasagna, curried lamb, dal, banana bread, lactation cookies, quiche, gluten-free bread, more cookies. And that was about it. But there was quite a lot of some things, individual portions of another. And yeah, pretty much any time I would make something in the months prior to having the baby, I just sort of doubled it and then added that into individual glass portions, basically, or portions in glass tubs. I cannot state enough how important all of those freezer goods were. It meant that I didn't have to cook. It meant that I wasn't surviving on toast alone. And it really did nourish me. And almost all of those meals were something that was going to make great milk. It was something that really fed my soul as well as my body. And yeah, I was so grateful to myself. I think I wished there were a few more like big family meals that I'd prepared. On all honesty, I think I had the pie and the lasagna, and then everything else was individual portions, which was nice, but I think I would have had a bit more of a balance. One of the key things I would recommend to you, if I could recommend maybe even just one thing, is to set up a meal train for you as soon as you're home from the hospital or as soon as the baby has arrived. It's just pure luxury. It's just letting other people care for you and look after you and generously create for you and make you something really nourishing and thoughtful. It feeds your soul as well as your body. And I'm so grateful. I think this time we had 3 weeks. We had it extended. We had 3 weeks worth of meals. I think my husband cooked at the weekends, and then we had the weekdays covered. It was just gorgeous. And I love a meal train. So I think it's like mealtrain.com. It's very easy to organize, easy to set up. You just send it out to people that you know, and then they can just sign up for a day that works for them. They sort of drop it off. They don't have to see the baby. And I was very clear about that this time, and didn't feel like I owed anybody anything. And most of the time she was asleep anyway, or I was breastfeeding somewhere. So I think most of the time they just sort of either dropped it off literally at the door and then ran away because they didn't want to disturb us, which was very sweet. So yeah, it was really nice to just be fed by our lovely local community and just be held by them. The other thing that we needed to do was organise some childcare for our other children. And I have 2 people to thank in that. Well, at least 2 people. My mother, my glorious, beautiful mum, who, along with my husband, those first 6 weeks, I really was very, very careful to not push myself too much. I think after I'd lost a lot of blood, like I was on the edge of acceptability with how much blood I'd lost, and had to have like an iron infusion and all sorts. So it took me a long time to really move. It took me a long time to walk up to the end of my road. I was really depleted. It took me a long time. And then I just really wanted to be careful about my C-section scar, really look after myself and take it very slowly. And I did. I think I'm a bit of an exception because I think most people post C-section are doing a lot more than I was. And by all means, like, there's nothing wrong with going at the pace that you feel like you can manage. But yeah, I think because I'd lost so much blood and it was such a trauma to my body that it just took me a lot longer to recover. And I really leaned into that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is thank you, Mum. Thank you, Pete, for basically doing everything for 6 weeks. I sat on that sofa. I was very well looked after. I was bought lots of tea, lots of food, lots of snacks. If someone else could hold the baby, someone else held the baby. Everyone, like, I think Pete did the majority of like the cleaning, the laundry, the washing up, as well as his job for the last 4 weeks, because he only had 2 weeks of paternity. So yeah, I'm pretty sure somewhere in there they were taking the kids obviously to and from school. I couldn't drive until 6 weeks, which happened to coincide with Easter. And then, yeah, I don't know how they did it. They worked as an incredible dream team, and I'm very, 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 very grateful to them. Obviously, Mum looked after the kids whilst Pete and I were in the hospital as well. There's just so much that I don't know about that was happening in the background, and I'm just grateful for everyone making that all work, so I didn't have the emotional burden as well of figuring out how to do all of that. So, and they just sort of made it happen. They just made it work. I have this lovely quote from Mother Bloom on Instagram, and it says, "If a mother isn't truly nourished, then what does that mean for her community? A nourished mother is vital. Self-care should not be up to the mother. Community care is what will truly nourish and build the foundation for a thriving community and mother. She doesn't need a mani-pedi. She needs her community to value her. Mothers aren't exhausted because their babies wake at night. They're exhausted because of what we expect them to do daily without support from a village. There is no thriving future for our humanity if mothers themselves don't thrive. Stop telling mothers they need self-care when we need community care. Community care is mother care, which is earth care, which is our future generation." I think that's so, so important. I wish I could shout that more from the rooftops. The only way that I felt I needed to change this particular, I guess, postpartum period was really to focus on that message, was that if I was surrounded by incredible people who I could honestly say what I needed to and be held by, that everything was going to be fine. I did have a lovely little blessing way before the baby was born, thankfully, just before. And I had my lovely friends, a couple of them, just come and sit and be with us, paint on my belly, and just communicated what I needed, I guess, in a postpartum. And they were so, so good at texting me and helping me and asking if I needed anything. And I felt held in that space, as well as by all the people that made meals, as well as by my husband and my mum. And just, yeah, it felt different this time. I felt like I wasn't relying on my own self. I think you can get in a bit of trouble if you feel like you're the only one looking after the baby, but I really genuinely felt like everybody was taking part and helping. But I didn't sit back and expect everyone to do that without me telling them what to do. I was quite prescriptive about what I needed and making sure that I was being looked after in the way I needed. Gosh, that sounds like I was being really, really bossy, doesn't it? But I promise I was being really polite. I promise. I also had the contact details of a postpartum doula who was nearby, that if everything came crashing to the ground and one of those people had got really poorly or something happened, that I knew there was somebody I could call on. I never needed to call her, but I could have. And she would have come and massaged me and done my laundry and looked after everything. I never even met the lady. I just knew that she existed, and that was enough for me. And I think, yeah, if something had happened to my mum or my husband, I would have called her in an instant, just so that she could come even for a short period of time. It wasn't that expensive, I feel like, for what if she could have just come for a couple of hours a week. I think that would have just held me enough, if that makes sense. I think another thing I did in terms of a mindset shift was really lean into the fact that postpartum is just hard. It's supposed to be difficult. Your hormones are changing. You've added a whole other baby. Your heart is expanding. It's supposed to bring you to the edge of yourself. And yeah, it's supposed to be difficult. And just to really lean into that and accept the growth that was coming and listen and learn the things I needed to learn and expand. I found that really helpful instead of fighting it all the time, because I think if you just accept that this is some way that you're going to grow and that growth was always difficult, and showing you your weaknesses and areas you need to get a bit stronger in, and where you need to learn new things, I think it's incredible. I feel like it's sort of this evolving into an even more super woman kind of a thing. And yeah, I just lent into that instead of fighting it all the time. And that felt really, really good. It's time for another quote, you guys. This one is from Abby Smisson on Instagram. And she's another postpartum doula. And this is just gorgeous. It says, postpartum and birth are fluid states in physiology, but also in energy. It's a time that it all comes out, whatever it is. Deep in the thick of it, in amongst leaking milk and bleeding and night sweats, is the potential for tears, for emotional shifts and a deep unfurling. It's a messy time, a soupy mess that has no choice to be walked through. It can't just be tidied away. The harder you fight it, the heavier it becomes. You have to surrender to it and you have to let it flow. Who you invite into your space, the energy they bring and their ability to sit in it all with you matters so very deeply. This is no time for the fixers because there's nothing to be fixed. Your baby may have been born, but this is now your birth. This is yours to wade through. And though you might not feel it, though you may look down in wonder at your tiny baby's beautiful face, it is you and only you who has the answers. In the messy magic, you will discover who it is you need to be for yourself, for your baby, for your family, for your community. I mean, I think that echoes the other quote really well in a lot of ways. I think community is just something that we are all so desperate for, that human connection that we've just not really had for, I think, a long time. The last 10, 15 years has just seen everybody be so absorbed by their little telephone screens. And then before that, I think for many years, just with big television screens, I think people get so absorbed by that they forget to connect with actual humans. And we need it. We need it so, so much. But I think there's no more important time, and there's no time that will greater show you what your community is made of than when you've just had a baby. And I do feel really blessed by how our local community and our family community came together to see me through this period. It's been a whole year of postpartum, of me being completely absorbed by my gorgeous baby girl, and now I'm just starting to find my feet again, to remember what it's like to put on a nice outfit, and to remember what it's like to shower on a regular basis, to remember what it's like to do anything other than sit and breastfeed on a sofa. And for me, this has been a really lovely time, spending that beautiful time with my baby and really enjoying what that season is. And I think I always find this kind of bit maddening, actually. Like, I find it drives me completely crazy, that bit where I'm fully mother and I'm fully present, and then I've got to somehow work out how to interact with the world again, how to be in the world again, and who on earth am I now? I have 3 children and I'm older again. I think this space holds a lot of magic. It's a wonderful time where you kind of get to recreate yourself almost, but it feels like this, I don't know, it's something quite miraculous. Like, you've been in the house and you've been hunkered down for a while, and it's sort of like, ta-da, world, here I am again. I mean, not totally, obviously. I've been doing the school run and I have been going shopping and I have been going out and I have seen people, but I don't know, there's something that changes within me, and I so desperately want to show everybody that I'm stronger and I'm more capable, and I think there's something that I want to reflect that somehow. So I'm still working through what on earth that means. Maybe if you have some clue what I'm talking about, you can help me by giving me some words for that, or a book to read or something. That would be really helpful. Leave it in the comments wherever you're listening. That would be really helpful. The other thing I know I did for sure this time was really get rid of any shoulds or shame around postpartum. Like, there's no should for how much I'm supposed to do or not do. There's no shame in staying home for longer periods of time and saying no to people. And there's no shame in not fitting into my wardrobe until 11 months postpartum. Actually, with that, and because I'd said I'm not going to be shoulds and shame this postpartum, although I don't think I ever used that language, that's just me trying to communicate it to you, just to be clear here. I just had this really clear mindset that it was acceptable what I needed to do for myself and the baby, and whatever that was would be okay. So I think 2 months, maybe 3 months postpartum, I'd been living in my amazing postpartum pants for ages. I'd managed to avoid having any like problems or infections anywhere in my body, which was my greatest fear, I think. And I'd really been in like super comfy clothes, and I was ready to like put on regular clothes again. But when I tried them on, they just didn't fit me. I couldn't pull trousers up. I don't know whether it was thicker thighs or thicker bottom, but I just couldn't get my old trousers on, especially just all my trousers, jeans, skirts. I just couldn't get them up past my thighs. So instead of feeling like all martyry about it and staying in my sweats, I was like, no, do you know what? It's summer. I'm just going to buy a few new things in a bigger size and own it, enjoy it. I really enjoy clothes, so that was really something that was important to me, and I knew it would be for a season, so I was trying to be careful to buy things that were like drawstrings, so that if and when my shape changed, that it would be okay. I loved having a slightly bigger body. I've always been very, very tall and slim, and it was nice to have like a little bit of a shape. So I really embraced it for the time that it happened, and it did take until 11 months for my shape to change. I was saying this to someone and they were like, oh, that's weird. Like, you didn't look different. I was like, no, I know, it was really strange. I would look in the mirror trying to pull on these trousers and thinking it doesn't look different to me, but it is different. And I'm sure when I look back in photos in a year, I'll be like, oh, I can see it now, but I just couldn't see it at the time. I didn't hate my body at all. I loved my body. And I loved everything it's been able to do and capable of. And growing a child is something absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm always really grateful. And feeding a baby also is incredibly mind-blowing. So I'm always very, very grateful. And I was never mad at my body. I just was like, no, we're gonna go to Next, and we're gonna buy a couple of trousers, and that's okay. Okay, let's end this podcast by talking about what we can do for other people if they are going through postpartum, and lovely things that people did for me that I really remember, and also just saying out loud that there were people that I thought would support me that didn't support me, maybe because they were afraid they were going to get it wrong. They weren't sort of sure what sort of things I would have enjoyed, and saying that actually anything that you can think of with love, that's delivered with love, is a wonderful thing. So even if that's something as basic as sending a card, then that's good. We actually had a cuddly toy sent to us from our car dealership, because one of our cars was in the garage at the time and they'd kept it for longer than they should, and I think they were feeling guilty, but it was a very lovely sentiment. They also sent a huge bunch of flowers, which was very sweet. Flowers, I love flowers postpartum. That was a really nice thing to come home to. Food, always appreciated in whatever format, whether it's homemade or shop bought. I love cook meals. Those are wonderful things just to put in the freezer for another time. Giving lifts to the kids, that was something that really, really blessed me. Voice messages were a godsend, literally so wonderful to hear other people's voices. I find that really soothing and comforting. Text messages, hospital visits. I had some lovely friends that came, and even if they could only just sit with me for 10 minutes or an hour. I had one friend who sat with me and I was feeling so rough, bless her. She was so good at just sitting with me and chilling me out. Chats on the sofa, likewise, when I got home, and I was pretty much attached to that sofa for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think, after I got home. That it was just nice to have people that were okay to just come and sit and people listening. I had such a traumatic birth that I really wasn't expecting, that it took a lot of verbal processing to work out what had happened and if it was okay and how I needed to move forward with that. So I needed to tell my story in lots of different ways. So people being open to listening was really, really helpful for me. Baby clothes. were very, very, very welcome, because the less you have to wash, the better, especially when you've already got children. If you're someone who wants to nurture mothers around them and you're in that phase of life, I really recommend getting the book The First 40 Days. I think that's what it's called, by Heng U. It's gorgeous, gorgeous book. I'm sure I've referenced that a few times in podcasts, and certainly in my old blog I would have referenced it. It's lovely. It's full of really nourishing, warming, easy to digest, very important recipes for making for yourself or for other people. And I think if someone had brought me any of those recipes, I would have been so happy. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you bring an entire roast dinner with all of the trimmings and you remember to add in a card game for the kids and some herbal tea and maybe some lactation cookies. It's not about how much you do, it's just that you do something. Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just send a card, just make a batch of cookies and drop them by on a Friday. Maybe just ask if they need anything from the shops. Okay, here's some other quick wins, quick ideas. You could make some golden milk and take that round. That would have been so nice. Some homemade custard, some rice pudding, some pumpkin soup, a crumble, some stuffed dates, a tasty curry. That would be so nice. Maybe some hot chocolate. That would have been really, really good. Some chai. Lots of nice, nourishing, warm drinks. That would have been really good. Some homemade fudge or some homemade cookies, biscuits. Heck, even if you just went to the shop and bought whatever biscuits were on offer, that would be great if they were brought round with a smile. Maybe even just at this time of year, go and get a packet of hot cross buns and some daffodils and take those to a mum that you know has just had a baby. And then if you are doing a drop-off, remember just these couple of things. Don't comment on what she looks like, whether it's positive or negative. Just don't say anything. Ask her how she is. I think there's a few things we think we're supposed to say about how she looks that really I don't think are helpful. And so then, but you can ask her how she feels. How does she feel? How is she feeling today? How is she feeling this week? And listen and respond. See if there's anything that you can do to help. When I had a C-section, it was really important that I didn't do a lot of lifting. So if people came, there were a few things that were really helpful that they could do, which was doing the laundry, helping put laundry out, lifting laundry up the stairs was really useful. I was absolutely fine holding the baby, but there were just a few practical things like that actually really needed to get done for the rest of the family to thrive. So I did invite people in to do that for me a few times. Something that I'd also like to mention here, the second thing, is that I think it's really important about our intentions behind dropping something off at someone's house, particularly food. I think it's really important to pray over it in a way, or have some really good intentions behind it, and to think about what would bless them the most. If there's somebody I know is going through, actually for me it tends to be when people are going through grief. I've had this a couple of times in the last couple of years where someone's going through a really challenging time and they're in that after phase, and I feel like I'm allowed to go into that space. I just pray and think about what would bless them the most. Them particularly, really that person. How can you nourish them, comfort them, make them feel held and special? What foods would do that particularly? And is there anything else that would cheer them, like flowers or chocolates or whatever that particular person loves, and really make them feel seen and known? And there's something really special there. So I tend to just think about it for a few days, and then eventually it will click, and then I will just act immediately. So I'm going to end the podcast here. My baby has decided to wake up. So I hope that was interesting and helpful. I would love to hear your comments, read your comments. I would love to see messages from you guys about how you have been able to bless other people in postpartum and how you felt blessed yourself, the things you most remember from your postpartum about how your community came together to support you. Because I think ultimately that's sort of what today's episode has been about, is just how I felt really held by the people around me and how that made it possible to have a really lovely postpartum. So yeah, I hope that you found it helpful. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. The next episode will be all about sort of clothes for the homemaker. So if you have any questions, do send them over on my Instagram, on my DMs, and I will make sure to answer those in the next episode. So yeah, have a really wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.